Howdy folks, welcome to the brewery. Today I'm brewing up one of my year of beer brews, the Scottish Ale. So this is a fairly traditional Scottish Ale in the sort of realms of what they call an 80s shilling. So it's a heavier Scottish Ale, yeah, sort of the wee heavy sort of style. This is a beer I've brewed twice before in minor variations. Originally was the Lochdoon Ale, and then I've rebrewed this for the daughter's wedding. Call it the meeting of the meeting of the clans. Both those brews were basically the same grain composition as is today's. I've just changed the actual base malt. Original brew was Gladfield Pale Ale. The wedding brew was Voyage of Valoria, because they were the base grains I had here at the time. This year, with wanting the year of the beer brews, I've actually wanted to get a little bit more, you know, fully traditional, so I've gone with the Marisota. But the grain bill is, I said, essentially the same across those all three beers. 91.1% Marisota, 6.9% Pale Crystal, and 2% Wyman chocolate wheat. So I said, a bit of Pale Crystal, a little bit of chocolate wheat, and that's it. Chocolate wheat's not completely traditional. Chocolate would be more the what you'd be expecting to get in the Scottish Ale. At 2%, it's very minuscule amount of the actual brew. And the chocolate wheat was what I had here when I did the original brew, and it works nicely. So I've not wanted to change it, so I'm sticking with it. As I said, this is a beer I'm doing for my year of beer book, that I'm going to be now bringing out the end of next year. I had hoped it would be the end of this year, but Twang Files threw that out, so it's going to be next year. But this is a beer I've really enjoyed. It went down well at the wedding. Everybody enjoys drinking it, even though it's such an unusual style, and it's very different to what people are used to. Very, very malt driven, without being super sweet. It's dark without any astringency, because there's no roasted malts in there. But just works well. Balances up well. So anyway, I've got the water on over here. I've treated it. I'm doing a 12 litre batch in the Robo Brew, so I've got about 20 litres of water coming up to temp. So I've treated it with sodium met, bit of calcium sorbate, blackjack, and a little mix of, you know, gypsum, calcium chloride, and some magnesium. Not a lot of any, just looking to get a little bit more heaviness in the water, a bit more magnesium than I'd normally use. All the details are in the, I'll put the recipe link down below, and I'll put links to both previous brew days as well if you want to go back and have a look at those. Slight change to the hops, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So I'm going to go down, going to get the grain milled up and get the mash on. Alright, are we ready to mash in? $66 degrees. I'm going to mash that for 40 minutes. Then we'll raise to 72 for 20 minutes, and final mash out at 78 for about 10 minutes. So we'll come back and look at the well, after mash, and see how we're travelling. Righto, that's mash done. Give that drain and get up to a boil. Righto, 60-minute boil. 9 IBU of Willamette and 7 IBU of EKG. "20 minutes to go and 4 IBUs of Willamette. Looking good. Alright, transfer on. Let that finish, then we'll check our final volumes and gravities. Righto. So they're all good. 12 litres. Pretty much bang on gravity, which was 1050 was target. It's probably about 151 fraction. It's sort of just there. Anyway. If you come up alright, I've just pitched a starter of White Labs Edinburgh Scottish Ale with a fresh pure pitch. I made up a small starter because I wanted to overbuild it so I could take a little bit off to keep in the yeast bank, because it's getting harder to get hold of the Scottish yeast. Imperial's getting a little bit difficult to get, and it looks like the White Labs might be going to get a little bit harder to get, as more brew shops tend to be dropping them due to the ongoing increase in cost. So jumped on a packet while I could, so I don't have the issue of running out of readily available Scottish ale, because it's not something you can get as a dry yeast. But anyway, we're all good. I'm going to get this in the fermenter, or fermenting at I think 18 degrees for 5 days, then 22 for 3 days, then cold crash for 2. That's the plan. I'll update you shortly when we're back on the taster exactly how that turned out. See you then. Righto, tasting time. And this be her. The oldie Scottish ale, the McLean Ale I end up calling it. We are a little bit late in the tasting on this one. I would have wanted to taste this one a little bit earlier, but yeah, shit happens. This was kegged back on the 10th of September, so it's 1 month old. So it's not that, I mean, it's not that long. I did want to do it at 3 weeks, but here we be. I've had a couple of glasses of this along the way. It's drinking nice, but that's no surprise. I mean, it's a bloody good beer, as I mentioned in the intro, and this is why it's in the year of beer. But anyway, let's go look at the fermentation. So it was 18 degrees for 5 days. It was then brought up to 22 for 4 days and cold crash for 3 days. So final gravity of 1012 from that 1051 starting point gives us 5.1% in the glass straight off the keg. So if you're going to bottle condition this, you're looking at 5, 5.5, 5.6. So it's going to start getting a little bit stronger. But that's she's, again, it's probably going to show a lot darker for you, but it's a deep copper, almost picking up some reddish hues, more a tanny brown than red, but being one that's blessed with colour blindness, my assessment of hues is not always correct. But anyway, it's a nice looking beer. It's clear. You saw it pours with a lovely white head. It's fairly dense and it sticks around. It sticks about reasonably good. It's a very white head. It's got a nice little malty nose, nothing over the top. And again, because there's only small percentages of the specialty malts, so there's not a lot to drag up big flavours. But anyway, let's get into it. Oh, yum. It's the Scottish ale is very. It's unique. It's a style that's very different from other beers. It drives a lot of that weight. It's a grainy note, but it's biscuity. A little hint of astringent bite, but it's only very minimal. But it's like a bit bitter caramel. So it's not, haven't got really the sweetness of the caramel, but not without going into like a burnt caramel sort of effect. It's probably, imagine if you put caramel and sort of got it 2/3 of the way to burning it, you'd have that sort of effect. A bit tanninish, it's probably the best way of describing it. And I'm wondering whether that's from the that 78 degree mash step, because that's not something I'd normally do. That was only brought into this brew because I was only doing the 13 litre batch. I was on the wedding beer where it was a full batch. The 78 degree was a sparging step, not an actual mash step where it sat for 20 minutes at that 78 degrees. And I'm thinking it's pulled a little bit of tannin from the grain. It's not a lot, but it's there. That's normally it isn't. So I think that's where it's come from. I said I don't even know. It's a bit strange. I don't even know why I've done that, because that's not a step I've ever done before. As I said, I normally aim to get the grain bed up to 78 degrees through the sparging process, but not. I said not mash it. I normally don't mash any higher than sort of 75, and quite often 72 is sort of that end mark. So, but that aside, it's still a bloody nice beer, and the tannin notes, as much as they're not exactly what I was aiming for, aren't, let's say, unwelcome. I got chipped. I can't remember exactly who it was, but I got chipped by someone about the chocolate wheat, and they were saying that traditionally it should be a black malt or a roast malt, and I went back and looked at some literature, and it probably is more it is more traditional. I think where I got the chocolate from was it was when I first was looking for the recipes, it was basically thrown around that you could sort of go either way. And it depended on the actual brewer which way they sort of went. Whether they went a little bit sweeter with the chocolate, or they went a little bit harsher with the with that roast malt or the black malt, and so I think I decided to go the chocolate malt, given that it's, you know, a commonly used method. But traditionally Scottish ales would have that sort of 2% that's, and this is chocolate, would have been a black malt or a roast malt, which in itself will bring in a little bit of a stringent and, you know, and those roasty notes. So you're getting sort of somewhere in the same ballpark anyway. But other than that, yeah, that's a nice beer. I've said it before, it's definitely not a beer that everyone's going to enjoy. It's profiles that a lot of people are going to get pushed off by. But at the same time, it has surprised me over the years the number of people who have tried this beer and really enjoyed it. And it just really wasn't what I was expecting. I didn't think they would have, but it is a good beer. So from this recipe, yeah, I'd definitely be dropping that 78 degree mash step and leaving the 72 as mash out, and sparge through. And again, as I said, I brewed this as a 13 litre batch. If you're brewing a full volume batch, you're going to sparge through from 72 anyway. You're not going to go that extra step. So that's not going to be relevant, and that will be adjusted in the recipe when I bring it out. So if you are brewing at home, drop the 78 mash step, stop at 72 and do your sparge from there. And if you want to go more traditional, you know, swap out the chocolate for a roast or a black. And I think black, it's like actual black malt as opposed to roast, is more traditional. And the reality is the black will have less astringency and bitterness than roast barley will. But again, it's more about bringing in that colour and just that little bit of back flavour. So that's entirely up to yourself. I wouldn't necessarily shy away from just doing this as is and dropping, yeah, 1% of the pale malt out and replacing that with some black, just to get that in there. But that, you may then bring the colour up a little bit too high if you're not adjusting down the chocolate. So you could even split the chocolate half and half. But again, that's going to come down to the individual preference, exactly how you do it. Traditional or black, sweets, you know, stick with the chocolate. And realistically, if you want it on the sweeter note, you could drop the chocolate wheat for just plain chocolate. But I said, it's not a lot. It's 61 grams in this brew. In a full batch, it's only going to be about 100. It's only about 110 grams, so it's not a lot. So it doesn't have a massive contribution. As I say, I'm very confident that that little tannic note is coming from the mash temperature, not the actual grains themselves. I'm not convinced that the White Labs, the Edinburgh yeast, has done as well as the Imperial Tartan did. I think the Tartan left a little bit more depth in the beer itself. But again, can't be sure that that's not to do with that that final mash out. Like I said, it's the only yeast it's about the only yeast you can really get that's fitting for the style most of the time. If you can get tartan, do it. Other than that, go to the White Labs. And if you can't get either of those, then like if you're really not going to go, I think just you know, a Lalmond, you know, London or an SO4 is going to get you a reasonable job. Even a Windsor SO4 or the London, depending on which brand of yeast you're using, those three strains are going to get you a similar sort of result. But anyway, that's her. It's a nice It's a nice beer coming out of winter, working into autumn. You know, it's still got some depth the other half with the cold weather, but it's sort of saying, yeah, we're walking into something a little bit better. Clearly, being from the depths of Scotland, it's going to work in winter. I think the plan is that this is the August beer on the actual plan, so it's the end of winter. So it's going to be end of winter, just tagging into autumn. Once you're off the stouts and before you start working into something a little bit lighter. But anyway, that's her. So guys, comments, questions, sneak them down the bottom, where you always put them. Patrons of the channel, as always, guys, thank you very much. Big thumbs up. Not for patrons, I don't get to play around with all this sort of stuff. I don't get to do the experiments that the channel does. So massive thumbs up and thank you to those guys. There's a link down the bottom to Patreon if you're interested. If you're subscribed to the channel, thank you. If you aren't subscribed, think about it. If you'd like to, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, then you get notified and you don't miss any videos. And if you like the video, give me a thumbs up as well. Looks like that down there, or it might be that. But either way, that all helps the channel. So for now, that's year of beer, Scottish Ale, done. More year of beer still to come. But for now, till I see in the next video, when we drink beer, we taste beer, we talk beer. It's all about good brewing. Hey, that's good stuff.